public. Okay, this is what I promise you. If we go off the rails, we will not make it public. Okay.
So
wait a minute, people in Elk go off the rails? Oh my God.
And
Impossible.
I'm encouraging us to go off the rails. Okay.
And I've had people that have asked that it be recorded because they couldn't come to it and they wanted to hear what was said.
So I know, and I'm a night owl and a late riser, so I was not at the morning show, but I know there were some ideas that were posited during the morning show, and those are listed in our document. Which do you want me to share that link with everyone, Kay?
I just did. You could even screen share it if
perfect.
you felt like
Look at you. You are absolutely ahead of the curve. So some of the things towards the top of the list, you'll notice there are a lot of blanks there. Those are for all of you to fill in. We want everyone to feel free to throw ideas in there and contribute to the conversation. So some of the things on the list right now are things like learning to learn, faculty qualifications, how do we really prepare our students, how do we deliver education, some of the other so those are easy kind of paradigms to challenge. Some of the other ones in there that maybe aren't as mild: equity versus empowerment, the capitalization of learning, proctoring surveillance system, quality matters I see in there, backwards design, student data, universal design. Those are maybe a little harder to engage with, not necessarily harder to challenge, but maybe a little more established, a little more controversial to say that you don't necessarily agree with. But that is what we're encouraging here is to say why you disagree with or why those currently accepted paradigms deserve to be challenged. So what I guess I want to do is before I ask my opening question, I want to ask Kay or Donna, do you have anything that you want to throw out there to start with? Did I kind of cover the impetus of this conversation?
I have nothing to add. You covered well.
And I was going to say, yes, let's discuss.
Cool. So what I'll say is I'll throw it out there. Anybody who's here, either in chat or if you want to come off mute, do you have anything that either from the list or not on the list that you think we should talk about? We should challenge.
I think there needs to be more support for instructors who have accessibility, neurodivergence, different ways that they are. Yeah, I mean, yes, for students, absolutely. But I mean, yeah, we need to support our instructors like that too. I told a story in one of the other sessions. I have an instructor who is hearing impaired, and she was livid because some training that she was required to go through was not accessible to her. That's right.
So maybe like the how we conceive of accessibility at an institutional and personal level.
I think breaking also the idea that, like in the document says, that accessibility is only when you have a person that has a disability. Like that's only when we think about accessibility. It shouldn't be that way, because accessibility is part of inclusion and usability in general. And
it's like it's about accessibility for everyone.
Correct. And like we have mentioned in other sessions, accessibility, it's a very wide term, and it's not only for quote unquote people that are disabled, but many times we have students, instructors, or staff that they don't even know that they have a disability, and they have been struggling with this since they were, in K-12 school.
And that's especially true now with all the people that have COVID brain and don't even realize how it's truly affecting them.
For sure. And so I will say that I am sensitive to people not necessarily wanting to be identified. I know that we said we wouldn't put this recording out there unless, if we went off the rails, which I'm sure at least one of us will at some point here. So one of the comments in chat, the institution is personal. Institutions have no being apart from the people who embody and realize them. So that's a great comment. We all make up the institutions that we work for. I think that what I put in there, and I see Kay was adding a little bit to one of the subjects on accessibility. What I put in there was shifting the culture from I'll do it when I have one of those students to I want to make sure all of my students feel welcome in my course. And that for me is why I think there's a huge challenge with how we've approached accessibility, because Kay knows I started working with the online learning office at Front Range Community College in 2009, 14 years ago. It has been a long time. And we were confronting accessibility challenges then. We were talking about how to confront them how to scale that up, right? We went through many large projects for captioning. We covered a whole lot, and I feel like we're still there. And I won't speak for Front Range, right? But I feel like a lot of institutions are still there confronting those same things, where it's, oh, I'll get to that when there's one of those students in my class. And I tie that to equity because that feels like something you would never say about a student of a different race or different ethnic origin, different background, but it's okay to say about someone who might be differently abled. And I don't think it's appropriate to approach it that way. And that I feel is why we really need to kind of push back on that paradigm of it's okay to cross that bridge when we get there. So Dan, I see your hand is up. Go for it.
Yeah, the thing too is like at an institution level, they always wait when chaos happens. Like, let's face it, most of the institutions in higher ed that have taken steps towards making things accessible is because they had a sue. They got sued, it was a major mess. And because they have the Department of Education and the Department of Justice breathing down their neck, is that they take steps towards it. Before, they wouldn't care. And I still have seen it that even after getting sued and taking just like the basic steps, then just drop the ball again until another sue happened.
For me, I'm putting a lot of comments, and you heard it during the neurodiversity thing yesterday. But yeah, accessibility, part of design justice. That's what it is for me straight. That's what it is for me straight out. If we're talking justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, it's the justice part. It's because when we're talking about those things, we're talking about traditionally underserved and underrepresented. Think about the images we use, in our courses. Think about even the videos and the audios we use. Are we underserving our students, and are they underrepresented?
I can talk for hours about this, so if somebody else doesn't jump, I'm just gonna keep talking.
Yeah, go for it, Helga.
Oh, I just had something to chime in as well. Oh, I meant to start video. There we go. So one thing, hi everybody, that I kind of missed, Deanna, when I worked with you at Front Range, right? You gave all of us training on accessibility, right? Our whole team. So it wasn't just about also teaching faculty about accessibility. It was the whole team, and our whole team in online learning, like, took that very seriously. And we tried to incorporate accessibility in all of our documentation, all of our emails, I mean, I feel like it also should go so far beyond just like teaching and in the classroom, and as an institution, it should be adopted institutionally.
Yeah, and that goes back to, again, having the support from higher ups. Like, if you don't have that support, doesn't matter how much you want to like get people in the right track and help. Because I'm particularly, I'm a believer that I don't want to 100% take somebody's content to make them accessible for them. I want to teach them how to address that as well. Not only because, like, many institutions take the approach of like, hey, I'll take your content, I'll make it accessible, and I'll give it back to you. What happens once it's in the hands of the instructors for the next or the following semesters? They break it. It happens all the time. That's why it's important to like create this training for instructors to, be actually have the basics on how to create accessible content when they're making a little changes here and there, or when they're trying to implement a new presentation or a new video, just to keep those basic accessibility guidelines in mind when creating the content. But again, we cannot push that into people's throats unless that we have the support of the administration.
I'd also say that encouraging our students to understand the idea of making things accessible for their fellow students also. So, I mean, I'm coming from the MGD portion of things, but I'm sure there are other ways that can be addressed.
Yeah,
I think it's a good exercise in having students create content or discussions or anything else that is accessible, where they discuss how they do it. I've talked to instructors who have had students that have an accessibility need, and it became they asked the student if it was okay if it was a conversation in the class, and it became a conversation where they were helping the student and in trying to figure out new and better ways to make it more accessible for the student. And she said it was one of the best classes she'd ever had.
Yeah, Kathleen and Donna, you bring up a good point. Like, I wonder if students really have the tools and the advocacy they need to I guess advocate for themselves on their own needs when it comes to this, because I know that the conversation we're having is that they shouldn't have to, right? That should be designed into these courses, but if what we're looking at is a way to shift that paradigm, is it enabling and encouraging these students to take the actions that force the hands of institutions to make it a priority to create these accessible courses? Is it making a checklist of, okay, did you talk to your instructor? Okay, they aren't going to make this accessible for you. Okay, did you talk to your disability services office? There's still a refusal. Okay, dean of students. Yeah, okay, now it's time to file an OCR complaint. Now it's time to do this. Now it's time to do that, and listing all those resources and steps for them to kind of push that forward. I don't say that to put the onus on students, but to give them the opportunity to advocate for themselves in a situation where they might feel helpless to change a situation that may affect their future.
thing is that like a lot of the students don't want to have that label anymore. So they don't go to disability services because they just don't want that label. I mean, particularly me, like I'm officially have certain learning disabilities and other health issues that sometimes put me on a bed for like days. And when I'm being asked if I have a disability when I apply for a job, I never mark yes, never, because I fear like, oh shoot, if I say yes, that's gonna take an opportunity from me. So a lot of the students actually don't want that label because of the fear of what might happen later.
Well, that same can be said about instructors. I mean, we've been working with instructors who have disabilities and they're not getting accommodations and they're being ignored and they're not getting help. And they don't want to go to the accessibility office and they don't want to file a complaint because they're afraid they're going to lose their job. So they think if they have to speak up, then they're going to lose their job. They're not going to be hired again.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a catch-22 there, unfortunately. All right, Kay, do we want to play a little bit of paradigm roulette here?
Jerry said abolish wage slavery. Which
I'm with you. I'm with you.
I think totally goes into it goes in, and a lot of us work as adjunct instructors while being learning designers, but it does go to a system of where a majority of the people who are teaching classes are being paid less than another group of people who have a lot of security and are being paid a whole lot more. And as
And a lot of power.
Yeah, it was a lot of power because they're usually at institutions where they say it's shared governance. So shared governance, shared power. And I think we also have it there here. People have also put academic freedom versus student learning too. But so, I mean, if we want to go down there, because Jerry quickly typed in when you said roulette, Jerry immediately put abolish wage slavery, which my mind goes to adjunct instructors. We could go into that. We could talk about that, or you could go ahead and you can play, paradigm roulette.
No, I think that's a great place to go, because that is I think there was some conversation around tenure in chat, which I think also fits in there a little bit. But yeah, Jerry, I see you unmuted. Do you have something you want to?
Well, just an observation. Yeah, this is an observation. I mean, this is I like to sift out and generalize things, right? And it's not to make them airy, but to kind of identify something fundamental in them. And this is something that's a fundamental problem that's not just particular to the structure or institution of education, right? I mean, this is sort of a baseline structure for a lot of stuff that we live in. Find me a workplace that doesn't look like that, right? Where the bones of the institution and how it works isn't structured that way. And that doesn't make it intractable. But for me, what I guess what came up in this discussion, because we've been here, some of us have been here chasing our tails in this particular area, a few times, is that there have been people throughout time who've worked on this problem and have worked other sort of solutions, potentially, including, well, what are some ways that you actually shift an institution, or you shift an organization, or you shift a structure like that? So I guess one of the things I want to add into the mix is that we can learn and pull from other institutions or other disciplines that have worked this fundamental problem, and maybe find material solutions, if not whole solutions, like a finger hold or a grip on a solution that would give us traction. So that's what I want to add.
So maybe looking towards something with a specialty in like organizational change, something like that.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to go to a subject matter expert, I mean, that might be one place to start, right? So what do the org change folks, you know, what have the traditions coming up org change say about this? How do you fix that problem? I think political economy as well delves a lot in this. You know, I mean, again, you're sifting out the essentials and saying, okay, how is this overlay with this perfectly? And what were the moves, right? And how's that translate into this particular institution, you know, in the particular bits? But the solutions are fundamentally the same, right? So I think there are, again, I think we can take advantage of sort of collective learning, right? Sort of the collective intelligence of people who've been kind of in these kinds of systems and have tried to work them out, figure out where some success has been, learn from that success, figure out how to adapt it to this. You mean, Kay, you showed that picture. We showed that picture of Henry Rollins earlier, and kind of, you know, to evoke the spirit of punk. But that's essentially it, right?
Yeah.
So if you're not in charge and everything is not set to make you totally happy with the way things are, what do you do, right? And people have found ways to navigate and move and realize something of something better, short of having the whole solution. I mean, they found ways to nudge, and I think that's kind of what we're sort of wrestling with here. It's like, well, what if you don't have budget? How do you start working on getting that support in institutional budget? Who's going to do that? Can I set them to work? What do we do in the meantime to address the need? And it's also including, I think, alternative ways. You know, we were talking about tenure. Like, why would anyone do it if they're not getting a paycheck? Why would anyone do it if they're not getting credit? That's the one I like hear all the time. Well, why do you get up every day? I don't know, right? I mean, there are things that we do just because they're important. And so how do you get people to understand that and orient themselves to their work like that instead of being biscuit boy? It's a favorite meme gif of mine. Who's the dog that needs the biscuit to be enthused, right? So here's your biscuit. Yes, I'm enthused. We need people to like approach their work from a different attitude, you know? And so I think part of it is finding other people that are like that and like getting together and jamming on solutions and like just doing things. Anyways, I'll shut up now. I feel like I'm prattling.
and to tell you, like the other night, Jerry and I were talking about like learning designers, and I'm like, oh, learning designers, we're so few. We're so few at the university. There's not a lot of us. I'm like, organize, us unionizing is not going to work. And then Jerry's like, well, if you get all learning designers across the US to unionize, so they couldn't hire a learning designer
internationally too. Yeah,
you know, unless we were able to talk about working conditions, and not just our working conditions, but you know what we produce for our students. You know, so that's the revolutionary like discussions that Jerry and I sometimes have at night.
So Kay, this is Greg. I'm gonna be generalizing a lot in what I'm about to say, but
go for it.
I've been called an associate faculty. I've been called an adjunct faculty. I've probably been called other things behind closed doors, but I just celebrated 25 years of teaching at Regis University, a liberal arts Jesuit university in Denver. Most of that has been online over the last 15 years or so, but and this is where I'll get a little specific. So when I was approached to teach at Regis, I thought it was like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever, right? I was employed at Hewlett Packard as an engineer, and someone wanted me to come and share what I knew about technology with adult students. I'm in, let's do it. So I say that because this is where I'm getting really I never I still don't ever have an expectation that I'm going to work full-time as an instructor at Regis University. It's just that's not part of my DNA. And so I think it depends on your expectations of what you want out of that label, whatever we call it now, adjunct, associate, whatever. You know, if your expectation is you're going to use that as a launching pad to eventually get into the university, the college, whatever, and be a full-time instructor and all that goes with that, that's a path, right? Another path is I'm really happy working where I'm at now, and I'm also happy teaching, but I have zero expectation that Regis would give me like insurance policies, and Regis would give me vacation time, and Regis. No, zero expectation that that's going to happen. And so I just say that as an example of, you know, I think it really just depends on where you're at, what you're wanting to contribute, how you're wanting to serve in higher ed, will then, I think, guide you towards whatever that looks like down the road, right?
And like
And I would
Terry,
frame it.
oh yeah, Terry, take
I
it.
would frame it. I would approach it from a different frame. That same thing, but just saying that, look, this is the material reality. It's not just the reality of adjuncts within the, you know, within this institution of education, because that's, you know, my understanding is a lot of universities and colleges, this is how they're structured as well, that there's an ocean of people in that sort of like precarious, not tenured, not fully benefited, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right, that are out there. And if you actually look at the material reality statistics of how many of those people go from the minors and make it, right? It's like, okay, how many people get wheedled out before, you know, after high school until they get to the pros? This many make it. Right. So if that's the material reality of the environment that I'm in, then if I want more than this, I'm definitely gonna have to work out a different solution. Right. And that includes, you know, well, then what does it take? You know, if I'm really serious about making it to the majors, what does it take beyond just doing the grind? And I'm not saying, okay, well, then I should just throw myself at the feet of the institution and just work myself to death, because I don't think that's that's necessarily going to get you there. And also that's kind of bad for your life, quality of life, right? But I think the material reality is that there's a lot of people in this kind of like situation, and it's like, okay, well, then what is the next solution? It's on a personal level, yes, but also as a group, or may I even dare say as a class, well, we have to figure out like a practical solution, right? So if I want to eat more, you know, or better food, I need a different solution than what it is that I'm working on right now, or I need to podge together a solution, you know, punk it and like figure it out. But anyways, because the other, you know, the when we get in these discussions and it goes that other way, it almost feels like having to like give up in a way, right? And I don't like that framing, because it doesn't leave me in a very good place. I'm like just sitting there in a mud puddle of disappointment because it's not going to work out. And it's really just, no, this is the reality of it. So now what? What do we do? Right? What can we do to like run up against this wall and at least knock a few bits of shit out of self-satisfaction? I mean, yeah.
I mean, I really don't want this discussion to be like a complaints session. You know what I mean? Like I really more want it to be a, you know, more of, okay, what's the established norm, and how I guess how can we challenge it, and why should we challenge it? You know, I mean, I think a lot of the time we understand there are problems with the established norms. Things like, you know, the adjunctification of higher education is a big one. You know, I think the why we should challenge that and the how we should challenge that is a big component of what I hope this group, and we've got a fairly large group here of smart folks can kind of add to that mix. So Leilanda, I see your hand up, and then I want to bring up a broad topic that is of really personal interest to me and see what folks have to say.
Okay. I really, I think that when you were talking about what we're up against, you know, as a fellow adjunct and learning designer, I don't really think of it us versus them. I think that something that I've been trying to do and trying to help others is how can we show them, or how can we show institutions the importance that we put in how, if we were doing a different job, it wouldn't take a month or a month and a half to get paid, or, you know, it wouldn't, like some of the trials that happen. And I think that's my big thing that I'm trying to do is how can I show them, and not in a mean way, but just I have found, so I'm just gonna say from the peoples, because I am African-American and Puerto Rican. And so my peoples have struggled, but I didn't necessarily struggle, but how did they get through these things, right? And I think some of it is that I find my biggest leader was MLK, Martin Luther King Jr., because he was very compassionate. He was trying to let people know, like, hey, this is something that doesn't really work for a certain minorities of people, right? Where actually adjuncts are a majority in the institution versus a minority, which is really interesting. So I guess for me, my thing is I'm trying to position myself where I get to have conversations with people who are higher up and kind of show them and lovingly say, oh, well, this person can't find a job, or, you know, people are hiring new adjuncts versus hiring the ones that we already have, that somehow, because then, well, not somehow, but enrollment is going down. So because enrollment is going down, how do we combat that, right? And how can we still keep our adjuncts, and it's not like everyone's going to be happy, but at least kind of meet halfway. And so that's kind of in what I have thought about. And when I think of a lot of these paradigms and moving things around is the people who came before me, how were they successful? What did they do? And can I use some of those same things, like killing people with kindness? Can I get close to you? And when you think you're my friend, or we are friends, right? Then we can have those hard conversations, you know, and you're not going to get everything. So I always think you just got to pick like 2 big things and just go with those things, and have to let a lot of the other things go, or maybe even just one thing. So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing. I think one thing that you said that really resonated with me is, you know, it's not us versus them, right? It's not a zero-sum game. It's a rising tide lifts all ships, and it's if you're gainfully employed and you know of positions elsewhere and you want to help, you know, somebody you know, or even somebody you don't know, that's advantageous. Even if you never get you know, receipts from that, doesn't really matter. You're helping someone who is in a position that you were in the past, or maybe in the future. So that's a great perspective. I really appreciate you sharing that. I do want to shift a little bit, simply because I do a lot with tech, and I'm really interested to hear some perspectives on that front. And so several of the topics that I see on here, I'm going to scroll back up so that I can take a look at some of these ones that we have here. So I'm going to kind of group a bunch together. We only have about 13 minutes, and we've had some really great discussions so far. So I think it might carry us through, unless people don't like the discussion, which I hope doesn't happen. but things like surveillance education, the capitalization of learning, proctoring surveillance systems, let's see, the learning management system, turnitin.com, student data, what else do I want to look at? Things like proprietary learning, kind of all of the tech stuff, kind of grouping that into one large
Looking
bucket,
at the
I
text.
guess.
Is it
Let's see here.
questioning our text?
I'm questioning all of it, and it's
Yeah.
my job. So what are the paradigms we should be questioning concerning learning and technology? Oh, there's a link to document. Feel free to put more in. So does anybody have anything specific or even broad within the sphere of learning technology that they might like to throw in chat or come off mute and throw out there that they think is problematic and we should kind of confront?
I wanted to
Student
say
data
something.
privacy.
Ooh.
Sorry, go ahead. No,
No,
I was just
no.
going to say student data privacy. I mean, the amount of data mining that's going on would make the GDPR puke. It's appalling. It really is. And that a lot of that stuff I think should be addressed in a more OER kind of a way. But yeah, the data mining is just
So mine is, and I know there are going to be a lot of people on here who do not agree with me, and it's totally fine. I have an issue with like watching students take exams. I'm sorry. As a neurodiverse person, and as someone who has tutored students and things like that, there's nothing more nerve-wracking than staring at someone as they are taking an exam that they're already scared about. They're already scared about the exam. And if you have students who are neurodiverse, which there is a lot more neurodiverse people than there aren't, then other types of things, anxieties can kick in. And now all of a sudden they're doing really bad on something that they could have potentially done better on. And so I personally am very against it, but I know that in sciences, it's like the big thing. Like they're like, lock it down, stared at people. And I was like, it's just too much for me. So I just wanted to say that for me, accessibility, I think that there are other ways that you can use the technology to help you make exams that would limit, if you're worried about cheating and things like that. It just takes a little bit more time. But I really don't, I don't agree with staring at people when they're taking an exam, because it's just, I can't, if I was taking an exam and you're staring at me, my my anxiety would kick in at a level that I would not do well on it, even if I had studied for it. So I just wanted to bring that up and just say that, because I know that in sciences, there are lots of people who are staring at their students as they take tests, which is so,
yeah. It is so not, yeah, definitely. And that's the thing that I have seen a lot with technology and with educators. You have the educators who are like, this technology makes my life easier. Yeah, sure, it's a little bit invasive, not friendly to everybody, not necessarily accessible, blah, 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 but it makes it easier for me. And then you see those educators saying, well, this isn't working, so let's do it better. Let's do something else. Instead of banning AI, well, let's use it. And I had a fascinating conversation with my web design class today, because I was like, okay, I went to ChatGPT and I looked up this tutorial. We started talking about, where it's going for web development, how it might be used in the course of web development, rather than, yeah, I don't know, even the lockdown browser, it's like, it's overtly saying to students, we don't trust you. And of course, there is a certain amount of that, because students, not all students, of course, but students will try to get away with things. But on the other hand, we have students who are excellent. We have students who, I have students who are smarter than I am, easily. So
On the other hand, I think there's something that we can take up in the spirit, an example of those students who figure out how to get around the system, right? I mean, so I just want to point that out that, yeah, I know that in that context, especially for students, that it's like it's frowned upon. But what I respect in that is the impulse to fight back against it, to actually work out a solution.
I
right?
was not a perfect angel in school at all. And I'm the thing that irritates me the most when somebody tries to cheat is when they do it badly. I'm like,
yes, have some respect for your craft. If you're going to do it, then like make an effort. Do it well. Don't
At least,
know,
do it for
at least put in
yeah.
a little
Yeah.
effort, right?
I'm not disappointed that you cheated.
Yeah.
I'm disappointed that I caught you. That you let me catch you. Do better. Just
do
get
better.
good.
And yeah, well, yeah, get good, scrub. Yes, exactly. Because I mean, at least from my classes, they're going from my classes, they're going into a workplace. And in the workplace, no, they're not going to sit down and take a quiz. No, but they're going to have to figure out creative ways around and through obstacles. And it's not directly applicable, I guess, but in some, I don't know, in some cases it could be. If they go to a site and they say, oh, that code works, and they use that code, that's real world. That's
Hey,
from-
you know, in the class I teach for you, we talk and discuss, and they do hacking. You know, they do hacking. And what's the difference between black hat hacking, white hat hacking, and gray hat hacking?
mm-hmm. Yep, we do the same thing in web design. Yeah, and dark psychological tricks and user interfaces. Oh, yes. Great.
Yeah. So Leilanda, I don't think you're in bad company here with not really liking proctoring, even down to something like Lockdown Browser. And for me, you know, I think we've identified a lot of the problems. I mean, I posted a few things in the document, as well as at least one in chat from a keynote we had a couple of years ago from Shay Swager, who has done an excellent job of talking about the prison to school pipeline of these technologies. You know, they're not only problematic, they're also discriminatory in addition to being invasive. But the thing for me is that they're easy to design away. It's easy in most cases to put together an assessment for that can figure out whether your students are able to accomplish or demonstrate the outcomes that you have for your course without the need for something even like Lockdown Browser. Now, there are exceptions to that, of course, but again, it's one of those where when you become so concerned with whether students are cheating or not, you lose focus on whether your students are developing the skills that you're hoping they do through learning in your course. You lose focus on revising the instruction and developing the learning that occurs there. So any other technology that folks find kind of problematic or things that we should challenge that are kind of status quo right now?
Again, this is very broad, but I'm hoping that, you know, there's relevance in the specifics. I think that the fact that you were talking about commercialization of education, right? That whole thing. And I think by and large, education institution is at a point where its main focus is in producing employees, future employees. So it's already in the business in kind of a very fundamental kind of commercialized role, in that you're creating employees, right? And again, when we're talking about, well, you got to get used to the proctoring, you got to get used to the monitoring, you got to get used to being like monitored and metriced and working on your performance and right, getting into that whole sort of like worldview that this is what you need to be acceptable first and hopefully successful is sort of what we're doing when we're doing this, right? I mean, our focus concern is, well, I don't want them cheating, but the experience that they're getting is fitting into this very peculiar box, right? And somehow going, okay, well, this is normal, and then going on into the world where they can fit into another box someplace where that's normal. And I would question if that's really the purpose or what it is that we want to do, or what a lot of people think that they want, that they're doing when they become educators.
And that's exactly what I was about to say. Well, I'm so worried about people cheating. Okay, good. Why are you worried? Okay, yeah, oh, fine. Cheating's wrong. Yeah, got it. Why are you worried? Oh, well, because then they won't learn the thing.
Absolutely.
Okay, so how about you shift into helping them learn the thing, and helping them work smarter, not harder, and not having to, drill and kill or whatever. I find that's, you have to shift your focus. Yes, we don't want them to cheat. Okay, why? Dig deeper.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think people ask but why enough in their work. Like, they don't go back far enough to get down to the ground and really get in touch with what it is that they're really doing or want to do. Oh, Brandon, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so I'm going to ask the follow-up question to that, in how do we get people to shift from that, well, I have to stop people from cheating, to, well, I have to help them more easily learn or more deeply learn or better learn these concepts? Because that really, for me, is a lot of the time, I think the barrier, the roadblock for a lot of folks is the amount of effort. Is not small. It really isn't. I don't want to minimize that. I said earlier, it's easy to create an assessment. Well, it is easy to kind of generate that. It's not easy to fully develop that and flesh it out. It does take time. It does take effort. But I do wonder how we kind of shift that focus, or even start that. And that, I think, is I guess the whole purpose of this discussion is to think about that how do we start these conversations of shifting those paradigms. We are right at 4:50, and I know we were at a 50-minute session, so I'm happy to stick around for a few minutes. Happy to kind of continue the conversation for a few, but everybody, I just want to say thank you for coming. I will go ahead and stop the recording now, but I'm happy to continue the conversation if everyone has a few more minutes to stick around and finish some thoughts.